Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, supported by Lecole, here with Benji Naesen for Criterium du Dauphine Stage 4 recap. Why am I on the ground if you're watching on YouTube? Well, I just had to move house. I just set up the router, and all I brought with me was my Lecole t-shirt, great doubling as a moving shirt, as well as my sunglasses. I couldn't do without both of those two things. So a little bit of a different podcast today, mainly because I've never lied to you on this podcast, and I don't intend to now. I didn't watch a minute of this TT because I was moving. Benji watched all of it. And so we're going to do it a bit differently today, where Benji explains to me what the hell happened in this TT, because it's got some super weird results. The profile before I throw to Benji: Fermini to Roche-la-Molière, 17 Ks, 330 meters of climbing, constant up and down. We've got rolling climbs and a fair few turns. But can you just explain to me what this course was like, Benji, and why that maybe threw up some weird results?
Well, this course was actually a bit underrated on the profile, I'd say, because looking on the road, it looked much harder than I anticipated when I looked at the profile. We've got a very lumpy terrain, rolling hills, and that initial false flat descent is a good start, but then it really starts off after a good 7 kilometers? We've got an uphill section that is on 5 to 6%, but there were some parts in there that were a bit more than that. I can tell you that from how those riders were riding it. Then a few rolling hills on top of that hill. We go down again, another small hill of a kilometer, then down again, and then the final ramp to the finish line, which was 1.4 kilometers at 4%. But there was a section in there of 8% according to the visuals on the right bottom of the screen while watching the race. So I felt like the time trial was harder than everybody was anticipating, and the riders as well, because certain teams were picking a strategy to go pretty hard at the start, and certain teams were picking a strategy to go hard on the end ramp, and that became very clear from the final results.
Alexei Lutsenko, first for Astana Premier Tech, with a time of 21:36, 45k an hour average. I'm looking through his Palmares. He's a strong guy. He's won a lot. I don't think he's ever won a TT before, Benji, except the Kazakh champs and Danish one in
Denmark, yes,
2014. It's too far back, and they don't even have the profile on PCS. Third is Casper Asgreen. Fourth, Kelderman. We thought he'd do good results. Fifth, Van Wilder. Notable omissions: no Ineos riders yet. 15 seconds back. Richie Port in 6th. Wingegaard 7th. McNulty 8th, 21 seconds back. Purstelberger 9th on 23, the same time as Thomas. Kwiatkowski 11th at 28 seconds. And the notable thing, Benji, which I want you to explain to me when I'm just looking at the results, from the time check to the finish, the riders who did that the quickest were Lutsenko, Izagirre, Asgreen. They've finished 1, 2, 3. Why was it important to negative split this, and why does it look like Thomas, who did the fastest first intermediate and like 15th in the last time split? What was the benefit in negative splitting this?
I think that the difference here is that the final ramp was, like I said, well, harder than I anticipated looking at the profile, and probably the riders thought so as well. So someone like Geraint Thomas, for example, must have seen the profile and was like, okay, I'm going to set a relatively same pace for the entire section because I'm a good flat time trialist, I'm a good hilly time trialist, I'm good on the rolling hills and time trials. Might as well do a mountain time trial. So he's good at every level of that. But someone like Lutsenko and Izagirre, they're decent on the flat, but they're stronger when it comes to the hill sections in these terrains. So they're thinking more tactically, saving a bit of energy at the start on the false flat descent at the start, then going harder on the climbing sections. And I think that's how this worked. Negative splitting, basically, what they did, setting a slower pace in the first half of this parkour to then smash it on the final ramp, which was arguably the most important one looking at the results, because, like you mentioned, Izagirre was 14th at the first time check.
Wow.
And at the end, he finished second. So he completely just didn't ride a insane tempo at all in the first section and smashed the final ascension, and that's how he got so far. But I'd like to bring it back a bit chronologically, because we started off with Vingegaard actually as one of the riders that was first on the seats, the hot seats. And the reason that that's important is because a few days ago he lost 9 minutes in GC, and we were a bit wary about him. We were like, for the time trial, perhaps not because of this. Turns out he had a an Achilles heel injury, a small one,
Yes.
in recent days, and accordingly he lost time according to that. But then again, his Achilles heel injury must not have been so great, because he eventually set up an amazing time as first in this race, because they do the opposite order of chronological the classification. So that's how they start. That's why he was one of the first ones to launch here. But McNulty tried to do the same thing a bit after that, set a proper time on both occasions, and he was unable to beat Vingegaard. I've got the feeling that comparing riders across teams, I so much compare Vingegaard and McNulty just because they're like the underdogs of the teams of Pogacar and Roglic. Is that something you do as well?
Yeah, and definitely like young up-and-comers, similar rider profile too. I mean, they were even in the same breaks together, Benji, in the Basque Country.
Yeah.
They literally got the same role in that Basque Country stage. So, yeah, very similar rider profiles. Surely there's something to do with team planning and team strategy for this TT. For Thomas to come first at the first intermediate and 23rd in the second split must be some blow-up, or he's just not able to hit his target power, or it seems like Ineos haven't, or Astana have got this one absolutely bang on. And I know it's hilly. I know, and these hilly TTs can have weird results too. But Thomas can be good at hilly TTs. Richie Porte's good at them too. So that's why this result is so surprising to me. And yeah, even Purstleberger, same time as Thomas, beating him probably by a few microseconds. Just super strange result. The only one we sort of is expected, Benji, is Asgreen on the podium. And for a big man, he must have been heavier than everyone else in the top 10. He must be still carrying some really good form, Benji.
Yeah, it seems he had that time trial in Algarve, for example, that we mentioned on yesterday's podcast, and he's done a great performance, and he did it across the entire parcours. So he set a decent time. I think it was 9 seconds behind on the first time check, and eventually towards the end, he kept that going. And on the last climb, we saw him out of his seat, just trying to strive for the best time possible on the final hill. Asgreen's kind of like, he's such an all-round rider. It's insane. Cobbles, hills. We have seen him climb at Algarve pretty well. And I remember vaguely that American race, was it Cali? Probably. A few years ago, where he also did well on mountain stages. I think it was Pogacar actually winning the one where Asgreen was doing well. We've seen him do proper sprints. Well, obviously beat Van der Poel in a sprint, but that's in a different situation. That's after a very hard race. But he's got like literally, I think, almost everything except for like top-notch climbing and top-notch punching. And
outstanding rider. I mean, he's coming on in the TT, and it makes sense. I mean, if you get if a guy can put out that sort of power in the last hour of Tour of Flanders, then if you get him in a good TT position and optimize it, he's going to be good at time trials too. Like Mathieu van der Poel would be an elite time trialist, in my view, if he really cared about it. But I don't think it's a discipline he's very interested in. This has big ramifications to the general classification, or maybe it doesn't, depending on what you think, Benji. Purstleberger still keeps the yellow jersey, a second over Lutsenko. Fantastic TT from him. He was even worried about losing the yellow jersey yesterday. Lutsenko's second. I think we have to consider Lutsenko a genuine GC contender, Benji, even though he's one of the most inconsistent riders you'll ever see. But 1 week races, dangerous guy. Asgreen in third, 9 seconds, same time as Yoni Zagira. So Astana have two threats who are basically, I'm not counting Asgreen as a GC guy for the parkour we have. So Astana are 1 and 2 are the GC contenders. Kelderman really well placed, 4 seconds behind the Astana guys. Then Van Wilder, big performance so far from the young Belgian. Port, Thomas are about 16 and 24 back, then Conrad and O'Connor. So tomorrow's stage, Benji, I look at it and, well, first of all, before I do tomorrow's stage, do you think Astana are fully in on GC for Lutsenko and Izagirre now? They have to be, right?
Yeah, I think they certainly are. I think that Izagirre was already their GC rider, but Lutsenko as a second man is definitely useful in that. And they've got a decent team here. Aramburu did really well in the time trial as well, but I think he crashed because he seemed to have crash marks when crossing the line. I haven't seen a confirmation on that, though, but he's part of that team. And in all honesty, is it Oscar Rodriguez here as well? I think as well for Astana, so he's already performing really well as well. I think on the stage that Postelberger won, Rodriguez was the Astana rider that was like 10 seconds behind the elite group, just trying to get back on to try and help Aramburu, but couldn't get there in time. So he's definitely on a decent level at least, but clearly not on the level to stay in that group apparently. Nonetheless, I think in terms of GC, like you mentioned, ramifications. And I dare to say that despite Asgreen is not necessarily being counted as a GC rider, he's the rider on their team that they're going to try for. Like, why would he not try being so close in GC? Just go for it. Because
the climbs are too long. I know try.
La Plagne, yes, but I think that the Le Sapi en Chartreuse stage 6, that second to last climb is long, but the final one, Asgreen should be able to do well on.
True.
So if he can hang on that Col de Port climb, then I do believe he can do something in the end, but La Plagne is definitely a part where that's hard for him. But the thing is, this is his opportunity to try it. Let's say he actually becomes and finish in the top 10 here of the Dauphiné. You never know, 10th, 9th, something like that.
That'd be a huge result.
I'd love to see that. And I think that's very promising as well, because that offers him a possibility to, if the Tour de France like 2021 happens again, then you never know. It might fit him as well. But that's very far in the future, because Asgreen's got multiple other goals that he's probably caring more about these days. But I think that's basically my thoughts on Asgreen for the rest of GC. There's still a lot to go for. Nothing has been decided. Port had a really good TT, but others were just better. Like we mentioned yesterday, he was going to have a good one, but not necessarily one to win this race on the TT at least. And I think the most surprising time trial, well, not necessarily surprising, but Van Welder, also a great time trialist, and showed that once again today. He's now 16 GC for DSM, and he's showing more and more in these kind of races that he's got the DT, he's got decent climbing, and that combined could be a GC rider.
I think Port is probably the favourite for GC, or maybe still Thomas. It depends. 8 seconds the difference between Port and Thomas. I still think Ineos are favourites for GC. I look at those final climbs, and if they set a train up and go for bonus seconds, whichever one wins the stage, assuming they're capable of it, then maybe today's an indication of bad legs for Thomas, but I still think they are in the driver's seat. Tomorrow's stage from Saint-Chamond to Saint-Vallier, 171k is difficult. Again, going to be difficult for the teams wanting to control a breakaway. You look at the final, there's a 1.4k, 11% climb. That's harder than the Murder-Wee, by the way. It probably might not have the pinches in it, although it says it's got a 16% pinch. That is long and hard, and I think that is a step too far for the climby sprinty boys. I think this is puncher territory only. And I mean, if Sonny Colbrelli gets over that Benji and wins this stage, I mean, then he's got the best legs of his life. But it's got this rolling climbs all day, like 2.4K, 7%, 2K, 6%, 3K, 6%. It starts with 4.4Ks at 6%. I'm thinking break, to be honest, because I'm not sure which teams are going to want to take it up.
Yeah, that's a good question. You've got indeed the fact that Ineos and, well, that's the main team for GC. Astana, I don't think is going to take over anything to try and go for it. But I would indeed, I dare to say breakaway. Or will Colbrelli try and set up things up again?
One team is the obvious candidate to pace in the GC group to set up for their winner, and that's Movistar for Valverde. Because you look at that finish and you look at stage 2, where Valverde was second in the group sprint behind Colbrelli, and they gapped everybody else. His flat kick is good. We have a flat finish here. The 1.4K is 11%. If they pace on that, they will drop anyone quicker than Valverde, one would think, and then it's 13 kilometers to the line. They really should be. This should be for Valverde if they want to control the break and drop the clock. Do you think they'll do it?
I'm not sure about it. I don't dare to say it. I think that the problem here is that next to Movistar, I still believe that an Astana would also quite genuinely possibly chase up on this, because Aramburu could finish well on this kind of finish. The problem is that they've now got 2 people in GC so close that they can't use those for GC. Lutsenko didn't pace on stage 3, which could already have been a clue that he was partially aiming for GC that we just didn't notice, because I mentioned that on that podcast, and I was like, why didn't he pace? But now it kind of looks like he's GC worthy, and that means that as a consequence, they won't be pacing. And who else in that team is then ready to pace? I wouldn't necessarily throw the entire team of Astana in the fire on this stage if you've got two mountain stages afterwards on which you want to try and win the race. So that's why I'm thinking Astana is probably not going to be pacing on this one. So indeed, Movistar is a team that could do it, but it could also be. Don't you think that Colbrelli's team might try? Like 11%, it's a lot, I know, but it's Colbrelli.
Yeah, I'd almost think it suits Turns more than Colbrelli. And I actually think this is a really good stage to attack Ineos because it's a short, steep climb. It's not like a 5K, 6%. You're not going to do anything to them. Like you can't, the train is immovable. But 1,400 meters, 11%, then with a descent and a sort of false flat descent into the finish, I think it's an opportunity to put pressure on them. Kind of like on Romandy, Benji, there was our last climb. Soler attacked. It was all mayhem. It was just Thomas on his own.
Yeah.
Dennis had crashed, and we couldn't believe, Port and Thomas were isolated, or if Port was there. I think there's an opportunity to put Ineos under pressure. O'Connor should try something on the climb. What's he got to lose, really? Kelderman from the sprint finish is quite quick. So if it's a group, Kelderman could win as well. I think it'll be a really interesting stage. We don't even know the form of McNulty and Vingegaard. They're up one day, down the next. I think Purstleberger will struggle over the climb, but a really, really interesting stage. I hope that even if a break wins, I hope we get some GC action and some teams decide to take it up because there's so many teams with moving parts. I mean, even Patrick Conrad could win this stage for Bora Hansgrohe. They got he's quick in a final, in a flat finish. So he's got one pro win. So there could be, and that's an Austrian national champs 2 years ago, won a world tour race. So there's some riders who should be really saying, I want this because we've never won a world tour race before. But what do you think, Ineos, Benji? Defense, they have Kwiatkowski on defense mode on that steep climb?
Yeah, they should. Like, GC is their most important thing here.
Yep.
They don't really care about stages. So defense mode, keeping their riders at the front. Also for that descent after the final climb. You never know that Astana throws a descent coup in again.
Sure.
That's what I have in mind. Just protection for their riders and trying to make sure they don't lose time on a plucky stage like this for them, let's say, because the other stages are more important for them.
Astana really, if it's a technical descent, I haven't looked at the map, but they got two cards to play. They got Aaron Baroud, good descender. If I was them, I send Jon Izagirre if he's there on the descent, and if Aaron Baroud's still there to attack with those two and make other teams or Ineos chase. Just put as much pressure on as possible because the climbs we've got coming up are the Ineos sort of climbs, as Benji mentioned, stage 6, sort of 7K, 6%, and then the La Plana climb, that's Ineos territory too. So this is an option for chaos tomorrow, and we're hyping it up a lot. Maybe we'll just see. Nothing that's
You're hyping it up a lot, mate.
I know. I like these Vuelta sort of finishes though a lot. Otherwise, any other news? Froome, Benji, you mentioned before we went on air something about Froome in the TT.
Yeah, it just wasn't a strong TT, and it once again offers up the question of should he go to the Tour de France? Is it going to be shameful for him to be there? I don't think for him it will be, but it will look like that, which, yeah, it's a bit cringe. That's the word I have for it. But, yeah, I just... He's not showing the form at all. That's clear. And I don't think that's going to change from the progress we've seen in the last months. And, yeah, I don't know what else to add to it. I think that's basically the conclusion that we have right now. He's not in form to win the Tour de France by far. And at this point, maybe to win a stage will be hard already.
Mate, he's not winning a stage.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
2 minutes 12 back on the winner in a 21 and a half minute TT that was hard, but kind of like that's like 30 seconds ahead of Caden Groves, who's a young neo-pro pure sprinter for Bike Exchange. So I think when Benji says it's cringe, I don't think he means Froome's comeback. I think what our view is that, of his own accord, Froome comes out in the press almost every week to say, going for 5th GC. He's always saying, I've gone to altitude camp, I've lost 2 kilos, it's going to all be better. And it's like, just stop. I know, if you're on that long path, be on the long path. But he keeps offering up these sort of carrots that we know they're not realistic if you're watching. Like, okay, you lost 2 kilos. If that's the case and your power's the same, why are your results horrific, But anyway, we'll see what ISN do with him. It's really tricky because €5 million for the exposure. He will get the exposure at the Tour, but it will all be negative exposure. But then they're not really a commercial entity. They're like a love child of someone obsessed with cycling and promotion of Canada and Israel. So it's like normal commercial and rational sort of decision making is not in play. But yeah, otherwise, my back's killing me. It's been weird doing this on the floor. Thanks for filling me in on this weird TT, Benji. I think I'm going to go and watch it because it sounds pretty mad, to be honest. And apparently I'll be watching the craziest stage of the Dauphiné tomorrow. But yeah, any last thoughts, Benji? Any other cycling news that I've missed while I've been up and down Andorra's main street?
I think a lot of transfer rumors, let's say, because Viviani's apparently riding for Elo Cometa next year, leaving Cofidis.
Okay.
We also had rumors that Bennett is returning to Ineos or Bora. No, not returning to Ineos. He's going to Ineos or returning to Bora, which is also, there's so much to say about those two. Like,
mate, they got to be a separate pod. What the hell? It makes no sense.
And I think there was another one. I think the Laporte thing we also heard about, that he's already confirmed to Jumbo, despite them not being allowed to confirm it before, what is it, August? Something like that?
Did it come from the Velaflits guy?
Yeah, but not from Jumbo.
No, but he's the guy. Whatever he says is true. He's the guy. If he says it, the Velaflits man, it's always true. Okay, interesting. Maybe let us know in the comments down below if you'd like a separate transfers pod, probably pre-Vuelta. The rumor mill will be really going. Or there might be announcements already by then.
By the Vuelta, they'll already be signed.
All right, well, okay, we'll do it maybe straight after the Tour de France if people want that sort of podcast. But thanks for listening, as always. Thanks to Le Col for partnering with the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. And from me and Benji, we'll see you with the recap tomorrow. Ciao.